Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. We feel blessed to have Ruben with us today. I'm trying to see, okay, we are going to be going live on Instagram as well. Instagram is temperamental, Ruben. So from one week to the next, we're never sure if we're going to be live on there. So
Oh,
welcome, Ruben. Where are you calling us from and what time is it? Before I read your bio and introduce today's topic.
I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, in the United States, right on the
Yes.
middle of the United States, like right on the middle. I'm like the farthest place from the ocean,
Oh,
and it
wow.
is 8:42 a.m. So 8:42.
So you're starting your day, and I'm kind of at the close to the end of my day and ready to kickstart this weekend into gear. So you still got a
Hey.
full work day.
Yeah, let's finish it. Let's finish it strong for both of us. I am excited. It's gonna be a great day.
Fantastic. So for those that are joining us from Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, thank you for being here as always. I can't believe we're on episode 93 already. I don't know where the time and the months have just passed by. And I think even in your name, the seasonal movement, we're going to hear more about this, but I'd love to understand what that all means. So, we're talking about today what if success didn't have to cost your peace? And we're going to get Ruben, where he's going to invite us to rethink productivity, rhythm, and rest, showing how true growth happens when we stop forcing and hustling and start flowing. Just a little bit about Ruben. Ruben Gomez is the founder of the Seasonal Movement and creator of the Neuro-Seasonal Harmony Method. I'm very intrigued. He helps high performing entrepreneurs and professionals achieve more with less effort. I feel like this conversation's for me today too, Ruben, by aligning their routines with biology, environment, and the natural rhythm of the seasons. Oh, very intriguing. After years of battling burnout and seasonal crashes, despite doing everything right, Ruben discovered that the issue wasn't discipline, it was misalignment. Drawing on neuroscience, chronobiology, epigenetics, all my favorite things, and Eastern philosophy, he developed a system that helps individuals perform at their best without sacrificing health or relationships. His mission is to guide driven individuals out of survival mode and into a sustainable rhythm, one that allows them to scale their impact, protect their energy, and live with deeper harmony all year long. Doesn't this sound exciting for those that have joined us? Please don't hesitate to interact and comment and ask Ruben questions on all these very interesting terms and names that he's given us to talk to about today. So, Ruben, where did this all start? Because surely you've had your own dark night of the soul experiences, as in the hero's journey, and somewhere this was a catalyst for you to be the seasonal movement guy. So tell us more.
Yeah, I am originally from Venezuela, so you will notice an accent. And I
Yes.
moved to the United States, the Midwest, back in 2010, so 15 years ago.
Okay.
At first, when you're coming from a tropical place and you hear about the seasons, the first thing that comes to mind is cold and snow. Like
Yeah.
that is the common theme. So I knew nothing about the rhythms of the seasons. I knew nothing about how culture and social dynamics shift throughout
Mm,
the seasons, how our bodies actually react. Like we literally have epigenetic changes within our body. And even more profound than that, we have unconscious responses to different environments. So I would love to go into more detail, but my story comes from knowing nothing to struggling. I am very driven. I'm a real estate investor. I am an entrepreneur. And early on, it was fine. I'm excited. I'm into a new place. Go, go, go. get things done, make more money. But after a while, I'd say about 3, 4 years into, I start realizing that something is wrong, but I don't know what it is. Like, why can't I get things done? Why am I suffering from this like confusion and anxiety? And I perhaps didn't went into depression, but when you hear the term winter blues, it kind of is not just depression, it's just like this weird feeling, this low energy, this questioning of everything. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about what the winter blues were. I was completely ignorant. So I went from being ignorant, from suffering from it. And I say this being a long journey. So like 3, 4 years into it, I realized that's the key. If I can figure it out what's happening to me through these seasonal transitions, that sometimes I feel high, sometimes I feel low, sometimes I feel like I'm in a roller coaster. If I can figure this out, then I can achieve what I want to achieve in my life. And that's when I started kind of looking into the seasons, into how we react to the seasons. And it all boils down to becoming aware slowly but surely, and then creating seasonal routines. So routine is what it goes down to. Like that's what we do day in and day out. And without being seasonally aware, I used to think that I could do the exact same thing every day, day in, day out. But my journey, through that journey, I discovered that the key was to adapt and to align to that seasonal energy and environment, and change the way that I behave and the way that I even think and did things season after season.
Mm. Ruben, I don't know if it's my line or signal that is very distorted, but for those that are listening in, anyone on YouTube, anyone, can you? I think it's my side. Ruben, am I back?
I can hear you, yes.
It seems like my screen is going away every now and then, and the audio, I can't also hear, your words are breaking up. So I don't know if it's my side. For those that are listening in, can you hear me clearly as well? Or is it just something on my side that I can't happen to hear? Ruben, can you hear both of us clearly, rather, so that we can hear from your side if the audio is clear? I do see there's an issue. Let me just see. I'm just checking on my Wi-Fi connection. No, there isn't. Can you hear me, Ruben?
Yes, I can hear you. I haven't got any interference so far.
Yeah, it seems like it's coming and going. So just bear with me for a moment for those that are listening in. Let me see if I can switch to an alternative connection, because otherwise we're going to have this very poor line. And I'm intrigued to hear more about this conversation. So bear with me. I'll be back in a moment. I'm back, Ruben.
Perfect.
Okay, so it seems to be better. I've asked the kids to get off the Wi-Fi and stop using the bandwidth because maybe that's another reason why we're having a challenge. But let's continue. So, what I heard you say is that from a seasonality perspective, it's important to adapt and be resilient to the changes. But what was more interesting for me, you spoke about epigenetics that is it's around during the different seasons. Did I hear you correctly when you
Yes,
said that?
so our body experience epigenetic changes throughout the seasons. There is about 4,000 genes that turn on and off as the seasons change.
Yes,
Scientists used to think that it was junk DNA, but in reality, it's just uh, parts of our body genes that are turned off during a specific season, but then they get back on as we arrive into the season that they are, ready to be utilized.
no idea because my understanding was that epigenetics is really sort of the gene that we've inherited from, let's say, our parents and our ancestors. And for it to thrive depends on the environment. So if it depends on the environment, which is the protein that's connected to it, then you do not necessarily you can change the forming of how it shows up in your life. But now you're bringing another dynamic in, the seasons. And how
Yeah,
did you discover this?
through research, I had to put myself to task on this to
Yeah,
figure out my kryptonite. So the more I start looking into it, the most interesting it got. And
yeah,
epigenetics was actually like the culmination that made everything made sense. It was the last place that I arrived to. At the beginning, it was chronobiology or circadian rhythms. At the
yes,
beginning, it was also a lot of Chinese traditional medicine and Taoism and just kind of Eastern cultures that do look into yielding and going with the flow.
yeah,
And neuroscience explains very beautifully too the balance between cortisol, melatonin, and
yeah,
melatonin and how
yes.
that changes throughout the seasons. There is a balance and a harmony that happens. But when I got to epigenetics is when I realized, wow, everything that I'm looking into is explained within this science, because epi means above,
Mm,
genetics obviously, is our genes, so, or
yeah.
biology or genes. So what epigenetic does is the science that acknowledges that there is something above the genes that turns them on and off, and that something is the environment. But the environment is not just the outside environment or the interior of our houses. The
Mm,
environment is also our lifestyle. For example, from a neurological perspective, our body is the environment of our brain.
yes.
How much we move will send signals to our brain to create different hormones and neurotransmitters. What we eat will also have that effect. So the environment is also our lifestyle.
Mm. Well, I mean, I'm just super intrigued. I'm going to have an offline conversation about this more with you because this is sort of something that I've dabbled into and touched, but I haven't done extensive research around it. But I'd love to kind of bring it into how does it then make us sabotage ourselves? Because then, if we're not looking after ourselves, mind, body, soul, and spirit, it sounds like those are some of the sabotaging behaviors that can kind of push us into experiencing burnout, because this is really what the topic is about today, is burnout and aligning success with with our seasons. So take us through what would be most effective then in the different seasons of our lives.
Yeah, so I want to start with
Are you
acknowledging
there,
that burnout is a big subject within the whole ecosystem. But I also want to acknowledge that you can put
Ruben?
this framework of seasonal living through every angle. and solve a lot of the issues that we're experiencing. We are often under the belief that by striving and forcing, we get the job done. And at the same time, we spend so much energy that is, in a way, not necessary when we are swimming against the current. So we suffer
Mm.
collateral damage because of that. Instead of yielding and understanding our biology, how it reacts to the environment, taking a little bit of time and understanding the environment changes seasonally and what it triggers inside of us, that is like
Yeah.
understanding the flow of the river. But instead of that,
Mm.
we completely ignore that. And because of that, either purposely or unconsciously, we are swimming against the current. And obviously, we get tired. Burnout is
Yes.
something that slowly builds up. So essentially, we first experience friction. We don't just go from, being great to just burnout. The way that I explain this with the seasons is that as the environment changes, we continue doing the same things, the same activities. Perhaps it's waking up at the same time because that's what successful people do, or that's what I do. Perhaps we try to do the same exercise routine all year round. We try to be consistent, and because of that, we create friction. At the beginning, it starts as friction, but over time, as the environment shift even more dramatically, because it starts as small changes, but over time, the difference between the summer and the winter is very dramatic. The difference between the summer and the fall, you know, depending where you are, is something transitional. It's something that doesn't happen at once. So at the beginning is friction, then it turns into resistance, and then it turns into burnout. If we keep going, 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 if we keep swimming against the current, the longer we do it, and the stronger the current gets, like the same example between fall and winter and summer, like summer and winter, the current is a lot stronger on the different directions. So we keep swimming in the same direction, doing the same things, and that is the recipe for burnout.
This is super fascinating, Ruben. So tell me, what was your dark night of the soul experience? When did you actually realize you've got to start listening to your body, to your heart, to your mind, to your spirit, to the seasons? What was that big dark night of the soul experience that led to this type of work that you're doing?
Yeah, and I love how you say body, mind, and spirit. I
Mhm.
think that's key. The the alignment piece comes from aligning those three components.
Mm,
And what I experience is something that I believe is universal. I believe that many of us experience. The difference is the degree, whether it's mild or whether it's extreme, because we
mhm.
are all in contact with our environment. And if we live in a place that experiences seasons, we are going to feel that change. The way that I experienced it was that I come from the tropics, so I didn't know anything. And I was just doing everything that I knew I was supposed to be doing, like, going to sleep early, waking up early, working out, like working hard, like working a lot. And I sustained that for years. But over time, it led towards burnout. So I experienced burnout twice in my life, and I closed my companies and I took 6 month breaks in between, and then I started again. But I never really understood at the time that there's supposed to be a flow through a year. It's not
Mm,
like a day in the summer is the same that a day in the winter. At the beginning, I didn't even know the difference. So there is an exercise that I go through in my framework, which is to understand our environment, which is that we do a light table. So lighting is the number one circadian cue from the
mm,
environment that we receive, and completely molds and changes and forms our neurochemistry,
mm,
the balance of hormones. So I didn't even know that where I live now, it gets dark by 4:30 p.m. in the winter.
Really?
Yes.
Yikes.
And in the summer, it gets dark by 9:30 p.m. So the reason this exercise is very helpful is because it's to become aware of those lighting changes. Lighting is the number one cue. We think that is the temperature, or we think that is the snow, but in reality it's lighting. Lighting is what goes through our retina, go to our supercharismatic nucleus, a part of our brain, in our primal brain, subconsciously creates hormones and neurotransmitters. So we feel differently. And I never really acknowledged that. I was on machine mode, perhaps. It's like, you don't really acknowledge that you are a biological human being and that you feel differently because I was numb. I didn't know anything. And the way that I interpret those feelings where I'm confused, like, why do I feel this way? Why every fall, when the lighting gets dimmer, it gets dark very early, how come I can't wake up as motivated or jump out of the bed and get things done? Or how come I'm so tired by
Yeah.
8 p.m.? Because I never really studied my biology. So that moment changed everything for me. But before I arrived there, I had to go through suffering, what I now identify as seasonal affective disorder.
Yes.
There's a part of the population that experience these seasonal changes very negatively. some
Yes.
some
Yes.
people say, hey, I have seasonal affective disorder. Others say I got the winter blues. Others even say I have reverse seasonal affective disorder, which is people that the summer really gets them into a bad spot. So that is the dark time of the soul. And that is something that is universal. Many people experience. And that's why I got so motivated to, number one, it was about figuring it out myself. But the most I kept figuring things out, the most I realized I'm not the only one. And if I'm going to figure this out for myself, I also want to make this available for others.
I love this. And Ruben, I can relate to a very close professional acquaintance. It's actually one of my clients. He told me last year, he said to me, I've not shared this with many people, but I suffer with something called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. It was the first time that I've ever heard about this. And I was like, what? But as you were speaking, and I mean, it sends him into like a depressed state because obviously it is winter, it is cold, it's dark, and he prefers the summer seasons. I mean, he's a landscaper, so he loves being out in nature, and it grounds him, and the sun gives a different type of energy. So I can agree with you that the light is the main contributor to how we will be impacted during these seasons. For me personally, I may have been born in summer, but I absolutely dislike it in every sense of it. So I'm not somebody that goes out and likes to be in the sun, lie on the, on the sand, on the hot sand, by the ocean. I love the ocean, but I hate it during summer. So
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting. I love being at the ocean during winter times because it is quieter for many
Mm-hmm.
reasons, but it's quieter and it's just got a different energy and vibe for me.
Yeah.
So it's making sense. I just never had awareness. And I think that's what our work is all about is how do we bring into awareness how people may be reaching a point of burnout? And this is quite a pivotal one to consider because as much as we're really talking about the actual seasons of the year, we also need to be mindful that life in and of itself has different seasons that we experience challenges, obstacles, evolution, change in consciousness. And so I want to bring in some of that because when we're having these changes, it brings on so many different trials and tribulations. So, how then Have you overcome some of those trials? Because when you're feeling sad, seasonal affective disorder, you almost go into the self-isolation mode, in the same way that you're potentially going to in summer. You hate it, so you go into a different type of isolation. What are some of your tips and advice or ways that you've had to overcome it that you can share with our audience?
So to link this with the example of the ocean and your client, I want to
Mm.
say that this is a very universal topic that we all
Yes.
experience in a very unique manner. Perhaps the everything is depending on three things: your location, the time of the year, and your biology. And the reason that I say this is because when you go to the beach where you live in the summer, it might be extremely hot, extremely crowded, but in the winter, it might not be as cold as my winters. So the winter might be that we are talking about 70 degrees or 60 degrees or,
Mm.
somewhere in between, compared to negative 10 degrees or, sub-zero temperatures with wind. So the reason that I bring this up is because we often take advice, and I'm saying this as a warning because I'm here talking about where I live, in the seasons that I live, and with my own biology, my unique body type. But you might be in a very different place with a very different body type and also a very different season of your life. So we have to take the university or the universal theme and make sure that we filter it through our uniqueness. So when it comes down to understanding the seasons of life, I think that we have to separate the fact that seasons are as a yearly cycle. Like seasons will come and go and they will repeat themselves. And with that, we have sensory cues. We have the lighting, we have the temperature, we have the wind, we have so many different visuals that change, smells, sounds. So our body subconsciously is picking on all those signals. And depending of the season of your life that you're in, is going to affect you. But what really is unique is your perception. So when we're talking about sad and being depressed, I want to separate this because depression is something that it is based on perception. Whereas being lethargic, because that's another symptom of the winter for many people, or specific season, is that we are lethargic, like we have less energy. We go to sleep early, we sleep a little more. That is just a bodily process that is natural. The perception that we put to it is what makes it wrong or what makes it right. The reason I want to split this, because when we're talking about the seasons of life, is the same way. The seasons are going to affect you. You're going to be biologically reacting to that environment. And also psychologically, if you are not aware, at an unconscious manner, or you can choose to become, relatively conscious on the way that you respond to it. But I want to separate them because you always have a choice, but it's based on your perception. The difference between being lethargic, low in energy in the winter, which is something that many of us experience, and being depressed is your perception of what the meaning you're putting to that bodily experience. So what I try to make people aware of is what you're feeling from an energetic perspective, from a mood perspective. It is a biological response to your environment. That's not your fault. Your neurochemistry is reacting to that environmental cue, whether it's the light, the temperature, and everything in your lifestyle is going to be affected by it. That is what I think that is so powerful, is that when you realize that you are naturally reacting to it, but everything in your life, I'm talking about the movement, I'm talking about your sleep, I'm talking about your nutrition, I'm talking about your social dynamics, I'm talking about the excitement that you get from life, the novelty, and even your outdoor connection. Those are the most important neurochemical behaviors to achieve neurochemical balance, to have a good harmony between cortisol, melatonin, serotonin, dopamine. That is all biologically. But your perception of those are the ones that you can have a choice. So I understand it's not me, it's natural. I understand it, I acknowledge it, and I surrender to it, and I choose what do I want to do with that. So my offering to everybody hearing is let go. Let go of that control that life has to be a certain way and you have to be doing certain things. Actually, go deep into it and learn more about yourself, because like the yin yang, they cannot be a white without the black, and vice versa. And we're in this world to experience every single shade of that yin yang, every single shade of that curve. So allow yourself to go there, learn about yourself, and become self aware.
You're speaking my language here, Ruben, because I just got off a discovery call with a prospective client. And the first thing I said to her was, if you want to work with me, I look at everything holistically. You may be a business owner, but you're a spiritual being having a human experience, quite frankly, and you need to get to know yourself intimately, and self-awareness is number one on that spectrum, right? And when we know ourselves, we can cultivate the right holistic habits. And this is, I think, what you're talking about is the perception is our reality. And if I'm hearing you correctly, is that that reality is really just a narrative that you've adopted based on your lived experiences and relationships across your life systems, your social constructs, your professional constructs, and so on, and that you have the power to reclaim your sovereignty by just getting to understand who you truly are at your core. And once you do that, you'll know and discover what are those holistic habits that are going to be more meaningful to you, because you might like the gym, Ruben. I hate the gym. And I might prefer walks at the ocean because I absolutely adore the ocean, or walking alongside the mountain. So we do need to understand ourselves to that extent, that it's not just these assumed adaptations that we find ourselves taking on based on what was there before, what was in our environments. We really need to get to know ourselves intimately and be curious to discover parts of ourselves that we haven't even scratched the surface with, because only then do we move into the space of being embodied self leadership. Because that's what I'm hearing you say, Ruben, is that for us to get to a point of self actualization, you need to know all parts of yourself, neurologically, your biology, your personality. I think what's his name? Joe Dispenza says personality becomes your personal reality. So I agree with you, is that that lens of your reality may not be completely accurate. And so it leaves room for it actually leaves room for you to go and discover what is truth and what is an illusion. But the most critical departure point on everything that you shared is, I get a sense that for us to really truly live in a tranquil, contented state, is to have non-attachment and surrender to whatever is, because the control part is the illusion.
Yes. So my perhaps the way that I am able to create a framework around this idea is by divided in three buckets, which the
Yes.
first one is to understand your environment. The reason it's important to understand our environment, and you're mentioning Joe Dispenza, which most of his work is working from the inside out, your mind, But even he acknowledges that the environment is the beginning of every thought, every
Yeah.
thinking process that we go through, every feeling. So I study the environment at a deep level to acknowledge what are the conditions that I'm living throughout the year. And I use
Mm.
the yearly cycle because the year will repeat itself. If you understand the year, whatever I am right now, I'm gonna be back next year. Let me give you an example. I'm looking at a window right now. This time of the day, the conditions of the lighting are very unique to this time of the year. The trees are orange. This is a very unique pattern, like a very unique visual that I'm gonna get this time of the year. And I can hear the wind a little bit. It's very windy. So my brain subconsciously gets that cue from the environment. Again, temperature, visual, smells, lighting. But if I look at this exact same window 6 months from now, it's going to be the beginning of the spring, and I will most likely see flowers in the trees. Like the buds are going to be flowering. I'm probably going to see a different kind of social dynamics. There's going to be more people walking because in the spring that kind of tends to happen. It wakes people up after a long winter. So my point is that the same window is giving me a different reality depending of the season. So I like to study that environment, and I have some frameworks to do it so that the individual understand this is what I face throughout the year. Then I move into how you are built biologically, as you are stating, is we need to know ourselves, and we are all unique. So if I tell somebody you gotta wake up at this time, you gotta eat this, that doesn't work because that other person might have a completely different biology than mine. So what I like to look is at body types and genetics, like literal genetics based on ratios in our body. We can come up with a biological assignment of what is this person biologically. So understand your environment, understand yourself, and finally, and this is where the seasons kick in. Once you know that, now you can actually look at your seasons. And by seasons, the reason this is important is because the environment is seasonal. The window analogy. What I'm going to experience on the summer is different than the winter. So that allows us to optimize that framework, that routine, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, what you want to experience for the next 3 to 6 months, which is that season that you're going to be experiencing. And what we do after might be different because that is part of the issue that we think that because something works right now is going to work for, I won't say forever, but for a long time. That's part of the issue is that we don't put an end date to routines and habits. But when we say this is what I'm going to be doing this season because this is what it aligns best with my environment and my biology, then we can thrive in this season and then we can adjust and align to the next season. For some people, it might be every 3 months. For some people, it might be every 6 months, depending of again where they live. That's why it's so important to have frameworks and not this is what you do specifically. It's more like go through these steps so that you can discover what you should be doing during this season. And then we will switch that out.
So that's amazing because this means it's not a one size fits all approach. And I love that specifically because it's the same thing I said to the lady that wants to work with me. How dare I, as a coach, a specialist facilitator of growth and expansion, decide what is the right thing for you, my prospective client? You have the inner knowing and wisdom. I see there's a comment coming through. Okay. Hi, I'm Cameron Akram. Great conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Anyone else that is here, apologies. I've been so intrigued. I usually acknowledged my audience who's here. Thank you for those that have joined on Instagram. Any questions or comments to our amazing guest. I mean, this conversation needs more than 1 hour. I almost want to say that wouldn't it be wonderful that we could demonstrate this and get people that's listening in? I don't know if it has to be an intimate exchange, so to speak, to do this three-part assessment. Do you have this framework somewhere tangibly that people can reach out to you and say, well, we'd like to establish where we are? Because what I'm most impressed by is that you're saying, hold on, I need to actually meet the person where they are and truly do a deep dive assessment and evaluate how I might be able to best hold that sacred space for them on this journey of discovering what exactly is contributing to their burnout. Because that's in essence that. And how do we bring them back into alignment? Oh, okay,
So
I see you put it there. Okay, let me
this
try
has
and
been the
copy
work
that.
of my life. I just put it on the chat. I have courses that go through this framework. The first one is free, so you can go into more detail about why this actually makes sense, and then you can move step by step. It is a framework, and it does make you think very hard in a way. It makes you think very deep on how can I make this philosophy, make this scientific approach work for everybody. It really makes you look at it from many different angles, because my desire is to make it into a course. I'm okay working one on one, but I know that time is limited and time is so valuable, and sometimes we just run out of time. So in a course, we have tools and we have step by step processes to align the person to find out again what the lighting environment is where they live, so they can decide how meaningful it is. Let me give you an example. Somebody that lives on the tropics might don't relate very much to this conversation because they don't experience that much of a seasonal change. They do experience it. For example, in the Caribbean, there is a rainy season, there is the hurricane season, there is the dry season, the windy season. And people that live in those locations know the difference. There's also the touristy season, and then there is the season that not much people go and travel there. So people do experience seasonality a lot from nature and also social dynamics everywhere. But for somebody living in Alaska, seasonality has a very different meaning. They experience 24 hours of sun, 24 hours of night during specific times of the year. So every individual needs to be able to plug themselves into this framework and achieve their own unique results. I can't be talking to a million people through a course if I'm just telling people what to do. It's gonna flat out don't work for 99% of the people and only work for the people that live around where I live, in the latitude of where I live. But if it's a framework of self-discovery, again, your environment, your biology, and then your seasons, then you can actually make people walk through it and discover their own way by following a step-by-step process.
You know what? I love acronyms. So when you say environment, the biology, and your season, what comes to mind is ebbs, right? And so the ebbs and flows
Oh my gosh,
kind
you
of
got that one. Yeah. Wow.
that
Wow.
just came to mind, right? Because
Wow.
if you think about that, it's a quicker way to remember it, for people
Yes.
to actually connect to it, because not everyone's going to remember, oh, what was that again? The environment, the biology, and the season. But when we talk about the ebbs and flows, because the topic about today is really aligning success with the seasons for those that have just joined, and to understand how our environment, our biology, knowing the self intimately, and the seasons impact us, making us misaligned, contributing to many of us the world over experiencing burnout, because we are pushing against the tide. Essentially, we're not
Yeah.
in flow. So when we talk about ebb and flow, the ebb is, the pushing, And the flow is when we're in alignment. So, Ruben, maybe you want to build on that and use that.
I, I am. And so I want to go into acronyms and I want to continue
Yeah.
into the topic of the call, which is aligning ourselves with our environment. In this case, is seasonal for
Yes.
success. The acronym that I like to use a lot is the seasons framework. So I have a few frameworks. One of them is the seasons framework. So what happens
Mhm.
when the environment changes is that our neurochemistry changes with it, or hormone balances change and
Sure.
adapt. The example of where I live, it gets started by 4 p.m. in this winter and at 9 p.m. in the summer. There's a big shift between cortisol and serotonin, which is the main neurochemicals that make us feel alert, that
Yes.
make us like a sense of pleasure and enjoyment,
Happy.
happy. And then melatonin, which is the neurochemical. It does a lot of things, by the way, but the primarily function for this topic is that make us feel sleepy. It prepares
Mm,
us to go to bed. It put us in a catatonic state. So
mm,
the balance between those hormones completely changes throughout the seasons because the lighting environment is the first signal that triggers them. So again, the lighting on the environment goes through your eye, go through your supercharismatic nucleus, the part of your brain that produces these
mm,
hormones. And since they change, you feel differently. You
mm,
actually think, feel, and behave differently if you allow yourself to it. The part of feeling, you're going to get it. It's just kind of what you do after. So, what I'm proposing is you feel differently, you think, wow, I'm feeling different because my environment is changing. It's natural. Now I'm also going to behave slightly different. What is the most important thing? So, if you were to change your life completely from season to season, like how do you create success by just randomly, oh, I just feel differently and I change? No, that's why we have a framework to change where matters the most. And this is key. What matters the most to feel your best so that you can behave and achieve your best? Number one, sleep. If you're sleeping well, you are going to be able to recover. You're going to be able to have autophagy. You're going to be able to have neuroplasticity. The benefits of proper sleep can be underestimated. That's why within my seasons framework, sleep is number one. Also, the way that we eat, it has to be
I
slightly
lost you,
adjusted.
Ruben. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
disappeared for a moment. Sorry. Go for it.
So I mentioned that the behaviors that we want to adjust are sleep, eat,
Mm,
activity, movement, and exercise, the way that we move throughout our life and throughout the seasons.
mm,
Outdoor connection, the way that we connect and ground, and the way that we experience life with nature changes dramatically from season to season. Also, social relationships, social dynamics, they change dramatically. And an example will be in Christmas, you have a very unique social experience compared to a different time of the year, whether it's the summer or the deep winter where people tend to isolate a little bit. And
mm,
then novelty, the level of excitement that we have in a specific season. Why? Because the seasons change all of these behaviors. These behaviors completely shift because of seasons. There is a lot that happens at a non-conscious level. There is a lot of instincts that we have to survive that trigger things. Again, the sleep is easy. Like I said, cortisol, serotonin, and melatonin
yeah.
completely
Melatonin.
changes. So the time that you go to sleep in the summer usually is later than in the winter. Again, it depends of where you live, but in my experience, being a very average place, if it gets dark by 9 p.m. in the summer and it gets dark by 4 p.m. in the winter, I have to adjust my sleep. And I'm not
Mm,
talking about just complete 360, but I'm talking about maybe an hour, hour and a half, I have to become conscious and self-aware how that affects me so I can adjust.
Mm.
And the same goes to eating. In the winter, there is a lot of survival instincts that kick in. We're naturally drawn to save energy, to avoid risk. And a lot of times that just means to eat a lot of carbohydrates, sugars, so that we can put on a reserve of fat reserves. That's energy, that's stored energy. So that happens subconsciously. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. That is extremely fascinating. So that is something that
Yes.
I deeply love to go into, but it really takes like, it's like its own subject. Every single of these behaviors is its own. So I'm just giving you an overview. And then the way we move. I play baseball in the summer. That makes me spend a lot of time outdoors with a lot of people, but in the winter, that goes away. So the
Mm.
way that we exercise changes. Perhaps you can go to the beach I mean, you can go anytime, but you choose to go during a specific season and not on a different season. So becoming aware and creating what I call a yearly programming of your movement, your exercise, your activity levels is key, based again by becoming aware that the environment is changing all those things. And then outdoor connection. I mean, we know, and if you don't, I love to go into, but I'm sure you have covered this because you already mentioned grounding. There is so many
Mm.
benefits that we get from nature, even red light. For example, we go outside in the winter, we go for a walk, we get a little bit of red light, but all our bodies cover. So this
Mm.
kind of enters into biohacks of how to still connect to nature at a different way. You know, using grounding mats, using light therapy, using happy lights to support that natural sunlight that we're missing. There is different ways that I go about it. And then social dynamics is the next step, which is that it absolutely changes throughout the year. And I have frameworks so people can discover, become self aware, and decide. Because some of us are extroverts, some of us are introverts. And when we are just out and about without knowing what comes our way, we might find ourselves into times of isolation or into times of
Mm.
extreme social connection that actually removes the battery of our energy for those introverts. And this happens throughout the seasons. There is seasonality to it, there is patterns. So I help you discover that. And then finally, novelty. Like I say, like I play baseball in the summer, that
Mm.
gives me a different level of dopamine, serotonin. And if you have nothing to do for 3 months of your life is going to be very boring. You're not going to be producing any dopamine. You're just going to start becoming, in a way, depressed. So, what we want to do is look into that and say, wow, I have nothing in my calendar for the next 3 months. I'm going to start playing pickleball, or I'm
Mm.
going to go and start sewing again. That is something that I enjoy. And I'm going to read every single day or once a week. And this is only for this season. And that's what is key, is that opportunities and challenges come and go based on the season. And sometimes we are doing something that is very good for us, and we don't know when to stop and when to reactivate. So many times we just let go and say, I feel horrible because I used to like to read by the fireplace, and that was a great habit, but I just kind of stopped doing it. And people don't realize it's because the season completely shifted, and now you're actually spending more time outdoors. You're gathering, your hobbies have changed.
Mm.
So when it comes back to next year, they don't pick it up again. So there is a documentation process that I guide people to become aware, so that next year, oh, this is what works during this season, and this is what I'm going to do again. That's the key. And that's how I believe you achieve success.
This is fascinating. So I try to type here. The S stands for sleep. The E is for eat. A was activity. I missed the other S. What was the other S? And then it was outdoor activity. But what
Yeah,
was the other S?
seasonal. The S is social dynamics.
Uh-huh.
The O is outdoor connection.
Yeah.
And the N is novelty.
Okay. So we're going to put it on there. I mean, is this framework somewhere on a website of yours? That
Yeah, it
that
is in
same.
my school community. So under my school community, I host
Yeah.
all my courses, and what I have created is a learning path so that you can go step by step into unlocking everything that we're talking about, a guided step by step framework.
Mm. This is just brilliant. I mean, you've posted it on. I see you've posted it on YouTube. I'm going to try. I did post it back here on StreamYard, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I'll copy it onto LinkedIn as well as onto Instagram later. But I mean, this is just fascinating, and I think our brains are designed to be able to connect to these. Well, I certainly am speaking for myself. I shouldn't speak for the masses because I kind of remember things in acronyms. So this for me is very easy to say, well, okay, so I need to be more mindful of my social dynamics because I, in my younger years, may have been an extrovert, but as I am gracefully getting older and more my upgraded version of myself, I call it, I prefer silence, and that solace. And what I find is I do get energy from people, but other times they consume my energy and I don't want to be around them. So there's something called ambivert, and people are ambivert. So the balance between the two is also meaningful for them. So I want to get into energy because I think we have a couple of minutes left. If we are energy and everything else around us is energy, talk to us about how this plays a role energetically along with your frameworks.
Oh, this is like my favorite topic. I'm so glad that you want to go there. We are 73% water. We are vibrational beings because we're water. We absorb vibration, we feel vibration. Obviously, we vibrate. And what is the biggest energy and vibration driver out there? Nature. We
Mm,
live in the earth, and nature is bigger than a person, than most technology that we have around us, even though technology also has an effect on us. But
mm,
nature is everywhere we look. There is trees, there is grass, there is animals. So the nature follows a rhythm, it follows a pattern of energy. In the winter and before the winter, like preparing towards the winter, the trees shed their leaves. They let go of that leaf because what they're doing is that they are sending their energy down to their roots so that they can thrive and survive during the harsh winter.
mhm,
Now, in the spring, that energy is coming out of the ground. It's literally coming out of the ground. The grass starts to grow again. It was completely dormant. It was yellow throughout the winter. The
mhm,
flowers start blooming. The trees start growing. So this energy is coming out of the ground everywhere that there is nature. And again, nature being massive around us. So if we are energetic beings that receive those vibrations because we are water, we're primarily composed of water, and water absorbs that energy and feels it, how can we not live in synchrony with nature? We do. We just don't know how to reflect it, how to express it, how to acknowledge it. But you feel everything that is happening on the outside, you feel it on the inside. There is very little difference. And none of this is under our control.
mm,
This is all created by God, happening in nature, and we can only experience it. So the idea of trying to control the way we go about things is in a way very egocentrical
mm,
because we are connected to that energy. And what I'm proposing here is that we connect at a deep level with the energy, not to just do whatever the energy is doing, but to leverage that energy, to leverage the energy of the seasons so that we can achieve more with less effort. If I know that in the winter, there is going to be a lot of energy going underground, there is going to be a little bit of dormancy, there is preparation that I can do. There is a lot of analytical natural processes going through our head because there is more melatonin in our system, so we can become more catatonic, so we can look back. So I have processes season by season where we can look back and analyze what I did this year is in alignment to where I want to go. Yes, no, I need to adjust a little bit. Like, use that melatonin to go high level thinking and to plan and strategize and start testing. So when the spring arrives, we leverage that energy coming out of the ground all around us that every social being feels and actually reacts to it unconsciously. We are aligning with that, and we already did our prep work in the winter, and we already know where we want to go because we did that introspection work that sometimes people confuse with depression because they're doing a lot of thinking, but it goes in the right direction this time. So when the spring, that energy start flowing, we start flowing with it, and we become exponential, and we achieve more results. Like, we kind of, turn the volume on, and we know that direction, because something that happens is we all feel that. But if we don't know where we want to go, we're going to go in the wrong direction. That is something that I experienced so many times, because
Mhm.
you have an urge to do, to go outside and do projects and do things. And if you're doing the ground projects, we
It's
sometimes
true.
confuse business with progress. But if you
Yes.
know and you're in alignment, this is my main aim this year in my life, this is where I want to go, and that's very clear, well, that's what you're going to be doing. And again, that continues to grow. So if you look into the summer, if you look into the late summer, there is a yielding that happens. The days are longer. So sure, go and work longer, go and work harder, but take care of yourself. So I have some processes to avoid burnout, because that becomes the issue in the summer when we're working from sunrise to sunset, because the drive, the serotonin, the cortisol is up to the rise, and we're going, going, going. So we want to actually mild ourselves down just a little bit and allow ourselves to feel that energy and to drive it. And then in the fall, as we start going down, like the yin yang, this is all the yin yang, by the way. That's how I express it the most. I have my framework based on that. As we start going down in the fall again, then it's time to recoup. It's time to close those open end that we left throughout the summer, those loose ends, like, oh, I will do that later because I'm so busy, I have so much to do. Fall is great for that, and to kind of close that cycle so that we can continue. So it's like we're always doing the things that are part of our purpose and what we're meant to do, but we have a little different angle because the energy is different, and we leverage that. That's when we achieve more with less effort, because we're not swimming against the current, we are going
Mm.
with the current. And if you see my little necklace here, this is a constantly expanding vortex, which is where we live. Our universe is constantly expanding. So when we are swimming with the current in the energy of the season, we get to experience that expansion. And we don't go through ups and downs and roller coasters like I expressed early in my life, that I will go up and then crash and burn out and then go up again and then burn out again. And it's like seasonal. So I
Mhm.
want to take the randomness out of it and bring the seasonal element to it. And it's not random. There's an actual pattern, and the pattern is the seasons.
I agree, Ruben. I mean, I know we've come to the end, and I'm just going to go for one more minute. And those that are still here with us, thank you for staying. So you said we 70% water. Water needs to flow, right? So there already is the biology aspect, is that if we're not flowing, we're going against the tide of our own biology. So I'm closing off just in my summary of my understanding, because this is deep stuff, and it's at a different intellectual level, and it's just so fascinating that even I want to go and explore more after this. So the water was the one thing. The second thing is nature. And nature, we need to nurture, and we are nature, and we are one with nature. As you say, we just forget that we are one with nature, because when we are feeling dis-ease, a lot of times, most of us, when we're out in the sunshine, or depending on whatever the season is that connects more meaningfully for us, it does elevate the dopamine, all the good chemicals in our brain that we refer to: dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, whichever is necessary for that given context.
Mhm.
Then I want to come to this illusion of control is, if we want to elevate our consciousness, it is about living from a place of equanimity. And being equanimous means being calm, balanced, and composed, and understanding the rhythms of how to get there based on the very things that is going to almost ignite that fire in you, or that desire in you, or to give you that level of flow of genius state, rather than push and hustle and chase states. So that, in a nutshell, is how I've understood today's conversation. And that, lastly, we are energy, and energy is a currency. And so we need to be mindful of how much of that currency we are giving out or taking back in, that could equally deplete us. And the seasons once again become that. I hope I've done it justice, Ruben. To summarize our conversation today, I want to thank you for a very, very insightful, fascinating conversation. You need to come back on again. There's more. And please, what would you like to say in closing, and where can people find you? Do stay on, even though I'm going to end the live soon. I normally do a quick debrief with my guest afterwards, but I'd like to give you the last word also, just to say goodbye.
Yes, thank you. We have covered a lot, and in reality, it's just like we're scratching the surface. We just touch all these subjects that are so interesting, and I hope that you have benefit from this. I just want to say, if it all comes down to one thing, it's about achieving harmony. Because in order to achieve harmony, you have to be willing to let go of that illusion of balance, meaning we're always evenly spread. When it comes down to seasons, it's more like the yin yang. And the yin yang is not in balance, it's in harmony. You can say it's both, but depending when you cut it in time in that line, sometimes it's going to be more of the black, sometimes it's going to be more of the white, and that's fine. You are sometimes going to be more of the black, sometimes are going to be more of the white. Ride the wave, get in tune to your environment, get in tune to your biology, which don't depend on you. So it is like surfing a wave.
Mhm.
Ride the wave. And if you want some guidance, just go in the school community. We have the link there where is the actual framework of how to do it. This is a beautiful subject that at times needs to be break it down so that people can follow through it. And that is where I have done that. If it's about a beautiful conversation, I think that we have had it in this podcast. But if it comes down to actually apply that, that is on the school community. So thank you so much, Anise, and everybody hearing. I look forward meeting you one day and having a beautiful conversation.
Definitely stay with me on the live. This is the longest we've gone over the 1 hour. So that's how fascinating it's been for me. Thank you for those that have been here on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. We'll see you again, same time next week. And we have a comment there from one of our, thank you for the tools to add to our skill sets. It's an absolute pleasure, Shahid. And we'll see you again next week, same time. And we missed our co-host, my co-host Jamila today, but she'll be back with us next week. I'll end the live, and then just do stay with me as we